Hello and welcome back to GPC. My name is James Batchelor. I'm editor-in-chief of GamesIndustry.Biz. We're the leading B2B publication for the video games industry, and I'm going to be the host for this panel session. Panel session is on the state of mobile gaming. As everyone in the audience knows, mobile gaming is at least half the global games industry. So it's by far the biggest segment of gaming. And yet I think certainly in my circles, like the conversation about the challenges that face video games face mobile games isn't kind of as prominent as it all gets drowned out by PC and console nonsense. So we're going to dig deeper into what's happening in the mobile space in 2024. For this, I have three excellent experts. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with you, Sayeed. Could you give us a little introduction to yourself?
Absolutely, yes. So I'm Sayeed. I'm based in London, and I've been in mobile gaming probably not as long as these tenured gentlemen that I'm joined by today. I've been in the industry about 5 years. I started my journey with a company called Luna Labs, a really great company, tech startup that provided creative building solutions for mobile games, and then I moved on to Iron Source and Unity. So went through the sort of the SaaS and ad services, and then moved on to Kwalee as a publishing manager now. So I'm now much more involved in the development of games, the strategy behind growing games, and overall just getting more involved with developers, studios. Yeah, that's me.
Nice. Mariusz, let's hear from you.
Hello, my name is Mariusz. I'm based in Warsaw, in Poland. I work at Google like more than 16 years already. All the time with performance marketing, and for a few last years with gaming, gambling, and sports betting. On the Google sides, on one side, I work a lot with the data, analyzing a lot of external and internal data. On the other hand, in the past, I work a lot with the startups, like leading mobile gaming initiatives at Google for startups.
Lovely, thank you. And finally, we have Enric.
Hi, thank you. So this is Enric. I'm based in Barcelona, in Spain, and I work as a VP of publishing for FunPlus. I've been in the company for the last 5 years. FunPlus is one of the largest mobile gaming companies worldwide, mostly focused on the strategy genres, but we actually are a multi-platform gaming company and also focused in different type of genres, not just strategy ones. Previously, I've been working for the last 10 years in between Latin America and the United States, living in San Francisco, where I've been working for several gaming companies and tech companies. So hope that we're going to be enjoying this panel all together. Thank you.
Wonderful. Right, we're going to dive in. I've got quite a few questions to be asking the panel, but if anyone in the audience does have a question, please do put it in the chat. I will see it. I will hopefully try and get to it before the end of this kind of 40-ish minute session. I'll do my damnedest. So yeah, if you have a question, do put it in the chat if you need. I always like to start these panels with kind of a very kind of broad question, if only for the awkward silence it creates as panelists try to guess or try to work out what they want to say. I'm going to start with, what are the biggest challenges in the mobile market in 2024? Specifically this year, what are the biggest challenges that mobile companies face in the near-term future? Anyone?
I was just thinking about this question earlier, and it's a question that I get asked quite a lot, or a question that gets asked quite a lot in general. And I read recently an article that said the golden age of mobile games, at least from a business perspective, so publishers and studios, is over, right? So we saw this massive boom during like COVID, and it was really great. There was a lot of high profitability, lots of games, but That period is really well and truly over, and don't think it's going to come back. And because of that, I think there is a lot of challenges that we face in 2024, especially because 2024 is not really a growth year for mobile games, especially. I think it's more of like a survival year. So you kind of like take over until 2025, and then you start to see growth again in the subsequent years. I think for studios, the challenge really is, and this is coming from a sort of publisher perspective, challenge really is to get funding, right? A lot of studios require cash to finish their games, and a lot of publishers are really trying to hold on to the cash until they know, this is the right bet, this is the right direction to go in, and no one really knows what's going to work until we've gone through this trial and error of a year for the next for the next sort of 12 months, I'd say. I think it's harder to also determine the success of a game as we did traditionally, right? So marketability was a really big metric, right? CPI was a really important metric to understand if a game is going to be successful. But now that is really not the case. You have to look at like other things like longer term retention numbers, which is really important, which just really means that the games that were doing really well a couple of years ago now won't do as well, and we have to build sort of bigger and higher fidelity games. So I think it's really a lot tougher for studios to get games through that process, especially when publishers are a lot more strict around what they are choosing. I'll let one of the other gentlemen say something as well.
I mean, I think it's like, a little bit, I see a little bit more complex in the way that you have a few sides. Like the first one is, if you look at the event data, it's still better than like last year. Yeah. So because even the last, like, 2 months, both on Android and iOS, if you exclude China, it's even based on the AI, it's around 8 to 10% year over year. So, okay, single digit, but still the growth. On the other side, the topics that you mentioned around the funding, of course, it makes the challenge that in general the industry goes towards being more and more risk averse, in the way that if you look overall the whole entertainment industry, not just the gaming, you most of the movies that are like going to the cinemas are, or like, no, maybe not most, but a lot of like sequels, or like the kind of the movies that are kind of where someone is playing safe. And I think that the same is actually happening a lot in the gaming side, which actually creates like chicken and egg situation. Yeah, because on one side, if you mentioned that this golden age is kind of over, it's coming probably from the fact that at specific point you need to a little bit reinvent the model, a little bit like add some additional business models and a little bit way to add some additional revenue streams. And because the industry is playing safe and being kind of risk averse, it's actually very hard to make it in reality, because at the end of the day, this marketability, this finding the funding makes that all those like really nice ideas, or sometimes breakthrough ideas, probably will be amazing in a few years, but they can die in a few months, because there is no one who wants to fund them.
On my side, I will say that I don't think it's the end of this golden era. I think that we've been seeing some successful titles that have been launched, like Monopoly Go, most recently Last War, or last year Whiteout Survival. So I think that these games demonstrated a lot that new ways to market the type of games that they've been evolving. So, for example, in these last two that I mentioned, Whiteout Survival or Last War, they improved a lot the way to manage the advertising acquisition funnel through new metrics, through new advertising formats. So I think that made something different. So I think that the most challenging things that we're going to be facing right now is that there's a lot of games going into the market at the same momentum. Of course, CPIs are going pretty high. and trying to get the return of investment as short as it can. It's not as it used to be before, and we need to find out different ways, improving advertisement, improving new channels. As you know, we've been always going through the traditional channels with Google, with Apple, with Facebook, the traditional networks, but most in this momentum than ever, most of these big gaming companies, the small gaming companies, are trying to find out different ways, like connected TV, like influencer marketing, different other kind of ways to engage different type of users, or to try to approach different type of audiences. So I think that the challenges here are how we're going to be finding the discoverability, so how we're going to be appearing better than others, and how the users are going to be selecting our game instead of another. So it's a mix in between how your game is, on how you are developing your acquisition strategy, and your creativity. That's more or less.
And actually, maybe I would add even one additional point, that I think, like, what we see is happening is that less and less the growth of mobile gaming is driven by tier 1 markets. And of course, that brings a lot of additional challenges, because on one side, a lot of those games in those non-tier 1 markets are not driven by in-app purchases, are driven, for example, by ads. And in general, there's much less market data around this in-game advertising overall. Then on the other hand, you have, of course, much more niches that are especially for companies that kind of got used to, okay, I have the one game, maybe a few campaigns that are going towards like US, Germany, France. So it's actually much harder to kind of grow it in sustainable way, much harder to understand the audience, because if you look at the India, like how many languages you have in India alone, and the same like you have in more and more markets that they were not kind of visible 5 years ago, but they're really getting to the stage including Martex, for example. I did very recently quite big analysis on Latin markets. So if you look at Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, even Colombia. So they are actually getting quite important markets, at least from the user audience and from, for example, in-game advertising perspective.
No, and also all these markets that you've been saying. Oh, sorry. So
no, go for it. No. Let's follow up on.
Just adding on Mariusz' side, I think that also these markets are improving on their payment systems. So that's also this helping a lot in order to try to increase a little bit on the revenue side. Go ahead, James.
No, that's fine. Well, I mean, you chaps kind of gave me perfect segues to most of my questions there, but I do kind of want to dig a little bit deeper into what Mariusz was saying about growth and the overall market growth. I think you said the market is still growing. The estimate I saw was Newzoo estimated that the mobile market actually shrank 1.6% last year.
Yeah, but for example, news data does not include in-game advertising as the example,
right?
Which is adding a lot of complexity, for example, to that case. Yeah.
But I think the main point, regardless of whether it's shrunk or is growing, I don't think it's growing as fast as it has in previous years. And this kind of goes back to the whole golden era of mobile gaming is over ? But I guess what would it take to grow the market? We already touched on kind of emerging markets, and as their payment systems improve, as smartphones become more available in those areas. What else will it take to kind of accelerate the growth of the mobile market again? Do you know?
I think a few things that are coming to the space. I think one that was mentioning that for example these new business models, even if you look at let's see what COVID made, for example, was that a lot of very traditional businesses move into the digital space. And very often, for example, once they move in, let's see really brick and mortar companies. Once they moved into digital space, very often the mobile advertising became one of their fastest growing segments, and which, for example, is making the growth of in-game advertising quite crucial as well, because the games are important part of the time of the users. Then if we look at add some, I think, additional elements are, of course, like growth of those markets that are very hard to know. Like, if you look at, let's say, top markets by growth of the top downloads or like the top users, you see some markets, like sometimes the markets that were not visible, like even 3 years ago, like Kazakhstan, for example, like the markets that you would not think. And if you look at what is the growth rate of the population and internal populations in regions of Africa, it actually brings additional value as well. Then, of course, we have this growth of AI as well, which brings totally different and totally new possibilities in terms of how to adjust the game to the specific audiences, how to understand specific audiences, how to actually make the user experience much more seamless than in the past.
I will say also, moving on a little bit into the markets. Markets, I think that markets like India are going to be some of these new markets that the people are going to be moving into pretty soon, because most people in these type of markets has been increasing their economy since COVID. Most of these markets has been always starting playing games or understanding a little bit the technology through the mobile. And if you think on these markets like in Southeast Asia as well, I think all those kind of emerging markets are going to be allowing different payment methodologies for the game developers or publishers like us. And this is going to be something that it's going to be interesting to explore if we are adapting ourselves on the size of our APKs that we deliver into those markets. If we adapt currently, for example, Indian market into the different type of languages, but I think most of Indian market will be able to be approached by English language, because they speak English pretty well. So I think there's opportunities in these emerging markets that we say, but also I think that the alternative payments is something that also is helping a lot to keep increasing the revenues a little bit on the gaming industry as well, and the mobile gaming industry.
Just to really quickly add about the market, and maybe the market that I'm thinking of isn't going to be as fast moving as the Indian market and the Latin markets that you mentioned, but it's definitely being super boosted by the government and the strategy. But I think MENA is a huge growth market, not only for like businesses like us who are trying to acquire users and find more players, right? But also from a creative perspective and a development perspective. So you see Egypt, Dubai, UAE, Saudi Arabia especially. I've talked about it quite a lot, and I find myself there more and more these days because of everything that's going on there. But so many developers are coming out of those regions that are being supported by the government and being boosted into mobile game development. So that's definitely a really interesting emerging market that I think is in the next sort of 3 to 5 years, maybe not in the next 1 to 2 years, but in the next 3 to 5 years will definitely be contributing to the growth of mobile gaming for sure.
We've got some excellent questions flooding into the chat. I've got 2 more that I want to ask purely for my own interest, more than anything. So by all means, be brief with my questions, and then we can really dig into what the audience is asking. So, audience, thank you so much for your questions. We will get to those as soon as possible, I promise. One of the questions I want to ask is obviously I spend a lot of my time covering the kind of console PC space rather than mobile. We do cover mobile as well, but we've obviously been the big headline of the last year or so is like the amount of mass layoffs and stuff. This kind of goes back into what you were saying, Sayeed, about surviving until 2025. We've seen kind of mass layoffs in the console PC space. I'm not aware of as many in the mobile space. Like, is this the same? Is mobile going through the same kind of downsizing in terms of personnel? Why not?
I think on our side, the industry has been facing the same issue in general, not just because of mobile or because of console, mobile or PC. I think that after COVID, well, in COVID, we've been seeing a lot of increasement on revenues on most of the gaming companies, I will say overall. And then after COVID, we've been relocated our revenues into the current stage. So during that period of time, there were so many companies that were trying to grow in different ways, and that was the reason why, if they didn't adjust correctly on the way that they needed to create some or manage some kind of policies like you're mentioning. But actually, I think that the situation is faced complex for all the gaming industry, not just PC or console. I think that the global gaming industry has been facing this kind of situation, but I think that now it's turning into the right momentum. So after adjusting a little bit, this is cyclic, right? So we've been seeing this situation in the gaming industry for a long time in a previous phases. So I think that it's just readapting the industry as it needs to be done, because it's been growing. It's been, it's sometimes, as we say, is shrinking or is struggling, because in order to try to get the revenue, the return of the investment as the way that it needs to be. But honestly, I think that this is a cyclic situation that happens sometimes, and it's not only affecting one or the other. I think it's affecting to the whole, I will say, tech ecosystem, not just mobile gaming, or it's the tech ecosystem that has been facing a little bit this situation. But I think it's going to be turning back when the situation globally is going to be
But I think to build on what you're saying, I think there is like one important difference, that like in the PC and console space, the share of the people who like really are taking part in the production process of the game, it's of course higher if we like compare it, for example, with the mobile space. And I think the mobile space was always kind of much leaner in that perspective. So now when we see much higher, more and more discussion about AI, about some like optimization of the processes, I think that's like it's coming sooner to like PC and console, because by definition those are like the bigger companies, even by the perspective of like, let's see, revenue per head, or like similar metrics if we look from that perspective. Yeah, so I think that's why, even if you look at like being honest, like for example, we see, I think, much more of that happening, for example, in Western markets versus, for example, in like emerging markets, for very, very similar reasons. Yeah, so that's why I think in overall for the next few years, some emerging markets will have kind of a little bit some kind of edge, not just coming from from that perspective, but even from the topic, like for example, funding. Yeah, because it's much harder to find the funding for the early stage of the company. So if you can survive for the same $100,000 that you got from the angel longer in the specific market, that's of course is giving some additional edge in that market as well.
I think also last part on this as well. I think after all of the growth for number of years in especially mobile games, you asked, is this the same in mobile games? And I think it is, right? I think there are layoffs happening in mobile. A lot happened last year, and they're still happening this year. And I think because of the sort of really, I wouldn't say fickle is the right word, but the ever-changing sort of nature of mobile games, from trend to trend, and changes in privacy and IDFA and sandbox and all of these things that you have to like really quickly adapt. It just means that mobile companies have to reallocate resources very, very quickly, right? And what some parts of the business become not as important as other parts of the business very, very quickly. It's not always a gradual change. So it does happen. It's still happening, and I think for the next couple of years it's probably going to carry on happening until mobile game companies, whether it's publishers or developers or ad networks, and I've been part of all of those. There's going to be more, and I think there's going to be more sort of trimming the trimming the fat kind of exercises.
Last question for me, because this is something I have been covering, I've been really kind of interested in, is we're starting to see potential changes on the horizon for iOS and Android in terms of opening up the ecosystem. So regulators, certainly in Europe, are pushing that iOS is now going to have to enable alternative app stores. Apple's very much kind of pushing back on this, or it's complying, but in a way that, but we're still going to charge you for these sort of things. Android already enables alternative app stores, but there's a kind of a push to get, direct payments in there, so you don't have to pay the 30% to Google. There's a lot of opening up, and there's been a lot of kind of scrutiny on the kind of the walled garden, certainly of iOS, but the restrictions in Android. If it does, or when it opens up, like, what impact is this going to have on the mobile space? Like, is it going to have an impact, or are developers still going to rely on the App Store and Google Play because those are the dominant marketplaces?
Mariusz, do you want to go as a Google?
Yes. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's kind of hard for me to comment on
Of course,
that topic. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, the consumer define the final outcome in terms of what they choose as what they want to play, and then of course, like, the game developers, where they want to add their games and how they want to promote. And I think, of course, in that perspective, if we see that this let's call it traditional marketing, or like traditional approach towards like promotion of the mobile games is getting more and more challenging in terms of like the market saturation, in terms of discoverability that was mentioned by Enric, then of course it's happening that like many developers is looking for alternative way to maybe increase the margin, maybe increase the revenue, maybe get some additional value. And I think it's much broader topic than just alternative app stores. It's exactly like something that Enric was mentioning, like alternative like payment systems, for example, like finding maybe some niches, like looking for some markets that were not discovered previously. You see some more interesting ways to do some cooperation. I think like let's see the like just recently we had a few cooperations between different like gamings and app companies, for example with chess.com, or like similar cases. Yes, so I think hard to estimate the final impact, especially that additional aspect of it is coming, of course, situation in China, where like the China as the market is challenging in the market, which has the quite strong influence on the rest of the markets, because it's pushing out the Chinese developers who are very strong, and they have strong influence on the market. To focus on other markets than China, then of course it's adding additional complexity to whole equation. Yeah, so I think in that perspective we will see a lot of changes, but coming just outside of the alternative app stores. It's just about how to find new users, how to find new markets, how to find the niches, and in some cases it's likely that, for example, looking for some alternative app stores, or like alternative payment systems, will be one of the ways to achieve it.
Okay,
go ahead, Jen.
Yeah. Does anyone have anything to add, or shall we dive into audience questions?
No, I was just going to
say
that.
We're going to get through as many of these. Okay. We're going to get through as many of these as possible, because I've just been, there's a bit of delay. I apologize. We're going to get through as many audience questions as we can. We've got about 10 minutes to go. I might try and push for 15. So this question was from Artem Skelias Bokajov, and I apologize now if I'm butchering anyone's names. If funding is such a challenge and publishers are more self-publish and look for alternative sales channels, or using a merchant of record to sell games themselves?
maybe add a couple of sentences to this. So mobile game, I think he said our mobile game companies looking to self-publish. So if we're, as Kwalee, we self-publish our own games, we develop our own games, but we also publish games from external developers, right? And whatever game sort of comes onto our radar. I think it's not just about funding, though. Funding is a huge element of it. But once you get the funding, right, you can get the funding from a VC, but you won't necessarily get all the other sort of the rest of sort of 70% of the journey, right? Where whether it's monetization, UA, growth, creative, production, all of these other things are super important in the publishing process. So even if, let's say, for example, an indie developer or a 10-man or woman developer wanted to self-publish, I think you often come to realize that you're missing a lot of the functions that are required to scale a game in this current sort of state that we're in, with like really super high UA costs and continuous sort of incremental improvements needed to find the right ad or the right creative or the right campaign. So yeah, it's tough to say that self-publishing is an easy alternative. Yeah, that would be my point.
But I think it comes to I think it's just coming to the specific topic that is happening now. That is like, if we say that in general markets it is risk averse, I think developers are pushed more towards the moment when they have some metrics, some kind of some information about marketability, at least basic marketability of the games, which means that they're pushed towards how to find the way to actually get the moment when I have those metrics, which means that that's why I think you have more and more, based at least what I see on the market, you have more and more, maybe sometimes smaller deals with some angels or like some small parties when, okay, I will take maybe smaller investment that will not grow the company in the long term, but at least helps me to get to the moment when I have at least day 2, day 7, or like maybe even day 30 retention or some basic monetization metrics, because then it doesn't matter if I will talk to publishers or like investors, everyone will have much better discussion with me and much open discussion versus if I just show the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, on my side, I will just agree 100% with what you guys said. But the point is, I think that the people need to know that in the mobile gaming industry, it's not just on the development or on the creative. You need to add the extra business side. The business is really relevant. So you need to know how you're going to be marketing your game, how are the metrics, how are the economics of this type of games. So it's going one step plus sometimes, rather than not just thinking that you're going into an external publisher in order to make it happen. I've seen there's so many game developers that are looking for external publishers, but honestly, most of the game developers, I would say, are trying to do by themselves their own, and it's more normal than in the gaming PC or online, right? So or console. So on the mobile, you need to have these different type of business people in the teams in order to try to help you, to support you, to make it happen. Even though you have someone who is going to be publishing your games, you need to also realize that all these type of metrics are going to be important for you in order to get a deal with the publisher in order to make it happen. So that's something that is important, and I think that it's really relevant to think that publishing is one of the business inside the mobile gaming, that most of the big game developers are also publishers, and we have people that have a lot of experience in that part as well.
Next question is from Alicia Chung, who asks, how impactful do you think subscription-based gaming services are on the mobile ecosystem?
I can if you look at the subscriptions, of course, it's big trend on the apps now. So it's visible that like in many apps, like fitness, diets, like fintech. You have like very strong growth of subscription. If we look at like mobile space, the subscriptions matter less. But of course, from the developer side, you have more and more services that you can use as the developer to build the game. Yeah, that's probably it's adding a little bit more like viability to the system. If it makes sense from the P&L perspective, it's sometimes a bit different discussion. But of course, I think now it again, from my perspective, it brings more impact from the development perspective, because we can do some live ops or like some stuff from that perspective. But if we look at the subscription in games overall, it's still quite early stage.
Cool. Anything to add, Enric or Sayeed? No.
think we can.
Okay. In which case, one last question, and thank you so much to everyone who sent the ones in. Unfortunately, the joys of a panel session is there's never enough time. So the last question is a nice and broad one from Shuja Khan. What are the current trends shaping the landscape of mobile gaming?
Trends is such a broad term, right? There's so many things we can say on this front, and be specific or not specific. Two things that really stand out for me. One is IP, intellectual property in gaming, right? Sort of familiar brands and ideas, like you mentioned Monopoly Go earlier, which is I believe is the one of the highest growth games and revenue games of the year of the last 12 months. Huge. I'd love to know how much they're spending on UA. But yeah, so IP games are really interesting, and I think you're going to see more and more of those pop up over the next couple of years. Some are going to be successful, some are not so successful. Some are going to be huge names that you recognize, and others not. But I do think that this is going to be a trend 100% over the next couple of years. Definitely like sequel IPs as well, of games, right? I believe like Minions Rush is getting a revamp as well. So things like that is going to be huge. But it's a different challenge and a different beast. But also monetization, I think, is another trend that's going to is changing for sure, and something that publishers like us are looking for. In-app ads it was huge with hyper casual, and it was drove a lot of users. That's why in-app ads worked. But I think now with the decline of that, in-app ads aren't as strong, and in-app purchases are going to be more of a focus to build into games, right? If you can build a good sort of in-app purchase loop within a game, then that's going to be a hugely important part of not only getting a game published, but making it successful from a monetization perspective. And I think more of like where it was a 90% sort of in-app ad before, I think it's kind of like turning the other way, and it should be sort of 60% ads and sort of 40% purchases, and that's hopefully that's where we're going.
Also, I think on what Sayeed has mentioned, I think that also another interesting one is that we've seen a lot of games from different type of genres trying to mix the type of genres. So you've seen a lot of hyper casual games mixing strategy genre, like the examples that I mentioned to you with Last Word, for example. So there's different kind of mini games or play format games that are integrated in other type of genres. genres of the games in order to try to reach different type of audiences. So at least in the strategy genre is something that is happening all the time recently. So integrating new type of genres in order to try to attract different audiences. But I think at the end is mixing genres in order to bring different type of users and maybe convince them in order to be in this journey that the game have for a longer time. So in order to attract them, to make them enjoy a little bit more when they are playing. So I think that mixing type of genres when you're building a game is something that is interesting. Or when the game is live, you can also see how you're going to be integrating different type of mini games or some kind of different type of gameplays integrated into this type of genre that you develop from the beginning.
Final words to Mariusz. Have you got anything to add?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's a very broad topic, of course. Like, cross-platform. I think it's something that is more and more coming to the space. In general, blending the mobile games into the whole entertainment industry as kind of, I think it's like, quite big topic as well. Growth of emerging markets that we mentioned a few times already. Looking for some additional business models, additional revenue streams, and again, this alternative app stores is actually even part of that as well. Overall, I think we will see more and more games for older audience as well, because of course in many markets, especially in Western markets, that will be quite strongly growing audience as well. So again, I think we can expect quite a lot of shifts and changes in the next few years.
Lovely. Thank you so much. I have gone slightly over my time limit, but I just want to take a couple of more minutes just to say a huge thank you to my panel. Audience, I know if we were in a physical space, I would ask you all to applaud. So either applaud at home or just maybe flood the chat with some clap emojis. But yeah, thank you so much for your time today, the three of you. This has been an absolutely brilliant discussion. Huge thank you to GPC for inviting us to take part in this, and enjoy the rest of the conference, everyone. Thank you so much. Maybe we can just very quickly finish with each of you. If people want to reach out and find out more about you and find you on different channels, where can people find you? Let's start with Sayeed.
Yeah, I saw whilst we were doing this, GPC posted a LinkedIn post, so where I'm tagged. So you'll be able to find me on LinkedIn. Please feel free to add me. I will engage and have conversations with you there, and then hopefully in other channels as well. But yeah, if you type in my name, Sayeed Rahman, Kwalee, you'll be able to find me.
Same on my sites, and LinkedIn is the best way to reach me out. So just ping me over there, and then I'll try to reply, definitely.
The same on my site. I publish quite a lot of data, a lot of market research on my LinkedIn, so that could be useful for some people as well.
Sounds like LinkedIn is the place to be. Brilliant. Thank you so much again, the three of you. Really have enjoyed this conversation, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of GPC.
Thank you.
Very much.
Good day.